Hey, this is Joshua with Cultural Catholic coming at you with another Domestic Friday. We got a couple of stories today, both that are pretty good. A little bit of a breakdown before we get into the video today. The first video is about Bannon possibly leaving the White House, and the second is about a settlement that Mylan, the maker of EpiPen, is doing with the federal government. So let's jump in. New York Times reports today that President Trump has told senior aides that he has decided to remove Stephen K. Bannon, the embattled White House chief strategist who helped Mr. Trump win the 2016 election, according to two administration officials briefed on the discussion. The president and senior White House officials were debating when and how to dismiss Mr. Bannon. The two administration officials cautioned that Mr. Trump is known to be averse to confrontation with his inner circle and could decide to keep Mr. Bannon for some time. So, what this is telling us is that Steve Bannon may be on the out with the Trump administration. The way I look at it is he's a rat, and he's smelling something that is going to cause the ship to sink, and he's getting out as fast as he possibly can. Now, why, you ask, do I call him a rat? Well, not in the traditional sense of someone ratting someone out, but he was the guy who was in charge of Breitbart for many years, and he largely turned it into a hub for white supremacists and white nationalists, largely defined as the alt-right. And he kind of helped, and he really did help after the RNC get Donald Trump into the White House. He was very integral to the strategies that were played out that I think did help him, help Trump win. Part of this white nationalism, white supremacy, is a little bit of economic nationalism thrown in, and that I think really did help Trump. I mean, Trump already had stumbled upon this idea of economic protectionism and nationalism, but Steve Bannon really turned it up to an 11, as the saying would go. Going on with the New York Times, Mr. Bannon's dismissal followed August 16th interview, which he initiated with a writer with whom he had never spoken, with the progressive publication The American Prospect. In it, Mr. Bannon mockingly played down the American military threat to North Korea as nonsensical until somebody solves the part of the equation that shows me that 10 million people in Seoul don't die in the first 30 minutes from conventional weapons. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no military solution here. They got us. He also badmouthed his colleagues in the Trump administration, vowed to oust a female diplomat at the State Department, and mocked officials as wetting themselves over the consequences of radically changing trade policy. This really is another thing that Bannon has really been outspoken about. He's really an isolationist when it comes to world affairs. This partially plays into his white nationalism and other things that I vehemently disagree with him with. But he's really kind of on the outside when it comes to this, because a lot of administration officials in the Trump administration are neocons, and they're largely for big trade deals that some people, including me, view as outsourcing deals. And they're also very much for war. Think Dick Cheney, George Bush, basically the administration at the beginning of this century that a lot of us who are on the internet now grew up under. He is against Bannon, but I really think that even though Bannon is against going to war with every conceivable country, and possibly countries that don't make sense, his brand of political ideology is something that I just can't know. And rounding out the story, More significantly, Mr. Bannon has been in a battle with Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, since the spring. Mr. Bannon, whose campaign against globalists was a hallmark of his tenure steering the right-wing website Breitbart.com, and Mr. Kushner had been allies throughout the transition process and through the beginning of the administration. But their alliance ruptured as Mr. Trump elevated the roles of Gary D. Cohn, his top economic policy advisor and a former official at Goldman Sachs, and Dina Powell, a former Bush administration official who also worked on Wall Street. Um, now, full disclosure, Bannon worked for Goldman Sachs for a while. Um, he then went into attempting to make movies, which flopped horribly. Um, However, he has largely gone out against Wall Street, and uh, globalist has largely been used as code word for Jews. So that's something to really think about. Um, but they really were kind of allied because they didn't really want a lot of. They were allied a little bit because they wanted Trump to succeed. Because if Trump succeeds, they succeed. But Kushner is kind of close. Would largely would have been closer to Reince Priebus in allying because they both really wanted a lot of the same things with economic policy and trade policy. Um, so the any alliance that Bannon had with those outside of his kooky white nationalists would have been short-lived anyways. Um, Largely, I think this was a long time coming, and eventually, and I thought it was going to happen a lot sooner because of the President Bannon meme that went around for a long time at the beginning of Trump presidency. Um, but I think I think Bannon will leave, and a lot of his crazy right winger allies will leave with him. Um, and we'll be right back to where we started at the beginning of the century with the president who knows nothing about anything and is being told what to do by establishment Republicans and neocons, which will be fantastic. A little bit of bad news at the end of that. Anyways, going on to the Mylan story. Reuters reports that Mylan NV, a pharmaceutical company, has finalized a $465 million settlement resolving U.S. Justice Department claims it overcharged the government for its EpiPen emergency allergy treatment, which became the center of a firestorm over price increases. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Massachusetts on Thursday announced the accord, which was soon after criticized by some congressional members as being too easy on the drug maker. It came 10 months after Mylan said it had reached a deal. Mylan was in a firestorm last year around this time for about raising its price on the EpiPen from $100 to $600. Um, and a lot of people were angry because people need the EpiPen to, not die from an allergic reaction, and making it so expensive makes it a little bit harder for people to purchase it so that they have it. Like schools need it, people with allergic reactions need it. And this was on a 2-pack, so just imagine buying several 2-packs to last you for a while, especially if you're a school, and that's just an insane amount of money, not to mention the amount of money it would cost us through Medicaid and Medicare for something that really is a lot less expensive than $100 feasibly. And part of it is that it was labeled a generic drug when they've been pricing it and labeling it as a branded drug, which is quite a bit of an issue. And this settlement came out of a whistleblower case going on. The deal followed a False Claims Act whistleblower lawsuit filed by French rival Sanofi SA in 2016, 2 years after it first raised the matter with authorities. Weinreb, the U.S. Attorney's office said. Sanofi, which formerly marketed a rival product called AvuQ, I remember seeing those commercials. Will receive nearly 338.8 million as a reward from the government. Sanofi, in a statement called "Pursuing the Matter: The Right Thing to Do," it has a separate antitrust lawsuit pending against Mylan, engaged in illegal conduct to squelch competition to EpiPen. Mylan shares rose 2.1% to $31.11 on the Nasdaq. So even though this issue caused Mylan to lose basically a drop in the bucket of money, they're still going to make a lot more money off of the shares. So that is both a blessing and a curse for Mylan. And Sanofi is also obviously doing this for money. But it is good because having a monopoly is basically allows EpiPen to have Mylan to have these insane prices for EpiPen. So while I don't agree with the corporate greed, I do agree with the fact that they need to deal with these issues that Mylan is doing. However, quite a few lawmakers came out against this. Like I said, some congressional members previously criticized the $465 million settlement as too small. U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, renewed that position on Thursday, calling it completely insufficient. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General analysis released in May found the U.S. government may have overpaid EpiPen by up to $1.27 billion between 2006 and 2016. Chuck Grassley also did not agree with the settlement, and he's in charge of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. But overall, Mylan is largely getting away with it. This is basically a slap on the wrist. If they actually were going to pay what they owed us, they would pay that 1.27 billion plus, because they basically been fleecing us for years. And a lot of conservatives and Republicans say that Medicaid is too expensive, Medicare is too expensive. Part of the reason it's too expensive is we can't negotiate for drug prices, and if Mylan is able to get away with this, it's just going to show that you'll just get a slap on the wrist if you fleece us for billions of dollars. So um, while it is good that Mylan is getting this punishment, it is not really a punishment, and they need to get more money. They need to have a much bigger fine. So yeah, this drain Republicans keep on talking about is from the pharmaceutical companies that they and Democrats get money from, not from the people who use the programs. So yeah, positive stories, but not as positive as things could be. This is Josh with Cultural Catholics signing